And today we have a very, very special guest, James Cook, coming at us here. James is one of the premier civil rights attorneys in California and in Oakland. And it's a real honor to have him on the show. He has a really cool past and a really cool history. And so I'm super excited to interview him and ask him some questions. When I brought him on initially, I told him I wanted to ask him one question, which was, how are you going to innovate? And how are you innovating? And how do you plan to continue innovating your practice? This is in view of COVID, but just in view of everything. Like how are you going to adapt? How are you going to change? And then I also was super excited to have him on here because he has an incredible story. I'm going to let him talk about it, but I think that the parallels between some of his hobbies and his practice, I'm sure there's a ton of intersection and a lot that James can teach us. James, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning. How you doing?
One of the reasons why I was super interested to have you on is because you have such an unusual journey, a unique path that took you to where you are now. And we started a little bit on this before, but maybe we can jump right back into your college experience and that transition, because I think there's a lot that people can learn from that. Just given the fact that you had this passion, that you were a fighter, but you were also just a really talented athlete.
I'd started boxing and wrestling and all that kind of thing, like in high school when I was late teens. So I played a lot of sports. I did all the other sports that everybody else did. But, really, I was more into skateboarding. I was horrible at football and baseball. I was okay. Well, actually, I was pretty good at football. I was a running back, small dude that could run fast. That was but I fumbled a lot. That was the problem. That's why I didn't take it forward. So I did a lot. I was like Adrian Peterson, trying to compare myself to Adrian Peterson. Yeah, okay, whatever.
That's funny you call yourself.
I did all those sports.
You're like a
yeah. He's not exactly small. Yeah, no, I played all those sports, but I was really good at fighting though. Like I was saying. I even had a partial scholarship in college for swimming. I was a good high school swimmer, really good. But you go to college and I was on a D1 team, D1 school. Yeah, 2 levels up because all these guys went to the Olympics. I was a decent soccer player, but every single person, like the people that I live with, literally played in the World Cup. One of them played for West Ham, for a long time, played goalie, Shaka Islat, and that was a team that I tried to get on, and everybody literally played World Cup soccer for their country. It's a historically Black school, so most of the people were from different places in the African diaspora, including a lot from the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, Virgin Islands, and then, all the African countries and Europe as well. You got to consider Europe as part of the African diaspora in a way. People were just really good at their sports. So that was not my thing. I finished college and I was already on the amateur fight circuit, and that was, right around the 96 Olympics. So,
James,
my sport.
Sorry to interrupt you, man.
But yeah, go ahead.
What was like the moment? Was there like a fight where you were just like I'm good at all these other things too, but I'm really good at this?
During the for that Olympic exhibition, it's called the Princess Cup in Thailand, and it's basically the same thing. Like you live in a village with everybody else in the country. So the U.S., we had a small team. We weren't expected to win much, and in my weight class, which is relatively, it's on the bigger side for small guys, but it's still small. I was fighting at 140, I think, or 141. We're in the game, because most of the Muay Thai fighters are really small, right? It's almost like the kids are the ones, they're at right around 119, 120 pounds. But I was on the heavy side, the heavyweight side at 140. What that meant is that I actually had to fight guys from Thailand, and that is the national sport of Thailand. So that was worrisome. I didn't think I'd do very well. You get to see a lot of fights, and you get to do a lot of fights. Had my first fight. This is in Uttaradi, Thailand. This is 1995, right? And
were you nervous?
I ended up beating the guy. Like I won. I was really nervous. I was really fucking nervous, man. I got to tell you, like you get nervous about fighting, but this was because this is the top of the heap for amateurs. And then when I realized my opponent was Thai, I was like, oh fuck. Because it was
like the real
everybody's
deal.
kind of like, yeah, like either Yeah, it's either the French guys, either the French team, which was a huge team, and you know, Thailand was a French colony, and the Thai guys were, or the French guys were just known as being good, solid, strong fighters. So I figure if I got a Thai guy or French guy, it's going to be problematic. But yeah, I fought and I won. I mean, I won it like round by round. My thing was leg kicks, and I got him, and I could not fucking believe it. And then all of a sudden, I'm winning. Like at the end of the fifth round, they're raising my hand. I'm like, oh shit, you know, that was like big news. Like that was a big deal. And everybody on my sheet, on my call sheet, was Thai. So I won the first two fights, lost the last one, but I won the bronze. The people from other countries, like the big guy from England, the English guys were pretty good too, kind of tough. They're hoodlums. They got in a bunch of fights on the street while they were there. You know, they're more like soccer hoodlums. But the guy who was the coach of the English team was like, hey man, like look, we want to bring you over to England, and you could come and fight with us, and you know, I'll turn you into a superstar. The same thing happened. Like one of the guys coaches with us was like, nah man, he's coming with us to Ireland. We want him to fight, you know. And so right then I knew. And then the next, right, basically a month after, I had my first professional Muay Thai fight, and it was against a Thai guy. You know, he was like a 5-time, so the Lumpini champion, the big stadiums in Thailand that, you know, they make the movies about, and you know, that are the big fighting stadiums are Lumpini and Roger Domner. And this guy was like a champion from both. And that was my first pro fight, and he beat the shit out of me. And you know, I got a taste of that, like the real deal. But after that, you know, I went on like a 20-25 fight winning streak after that. So like, you know, you fight the best.
You got bronze in this one competition, and then you started to get some real attention. You got some real attention. Now
I got some real attention.
But I'm curious, like, why didn't you take up, like, why didn't you go to Ireland? Why didn't you go to England? Like, why didn't you take up these offers?
I did eventually, but as a pro, like they wanted me to come and live in their locations, and I was kind of like, we had a good team, man. My coach, well-known coach, Greg Nelson, he trains almost all the UFC guys. Like everybody would know him from Brock Lesnar, you know, and Sean Shirk, like big huge stars in the UFC, and Rose Namajunas, who's currently like the big deal in the UFC, like women's UFC, Rose Namajunas, but Greg Nelson, and I came from what is now really well known as a gym, and I think that was the beginning of the when that Minnesota Martial Arts Academy became really well known. And we're also, you know, our progeny also includes Rick Fay, but now you see Greg Nelson on TV with multiple UFC fighters, but all the big ones such as Brock Lesnar and Rose Namajunas now, who's currently fighting now.
So it was a matter of kind of loyalty, where it's like you wanted to stick with your team. You weren't going to go and join these other teams.
I mean, there's a couple things going on. I mean, I was considering law school, and like I said, I was playing indoor soccer when I was back home in Minneapolis. And one of the guys who's my mentor, his name is John Shulman, and I'm on a case with him and his dad right now where we're suing the Minneapolis public school or Minnesota public schools. John, you know, he just finished Harvard, and he was helping me write my essays. Him and a couple other guys who all finished Harvard. They all lived in a house together, and they're kind of getting started working big law. And they're kind of like, why are you doing this, man? Like, don't, you know, you got an opportunity to do stuff that other people only wish they could do. And like, if you can do it, you should like go do the Olympic thing. Go, you know, hey, if I could be a professional soccer player or any athlete, I would do it. So yeah, I listened to him, and I'm glad, you know, I never looked back. And that's what I did for 20 years. And I was supporting myself by doing freelance writing. And then also at that time, that was when the internet really hit, right? That was like about 95, 96. And so I learned HTML, you know, so I could publish things that I was writing. Cause I was writing for newspapers and magazines, right? I was writing for the paper in Minneapolis that became part of the Village Voice, you know, doing book reviews, right? And music reviews.
Were you always a heavy reader?
And I was a heavy reader, yeah, and yes. And so, I mean, you know, I'm flying all over the world, right? and driving long distances, yeah, you know, for competition. So I'm just reading everything, right? I was doing that, and then I learned HTML because at the time that's how you self-publish. so I could support myself. So it was like a couple things that were going on at the same time. I kind of needed to be home. Plus, you know, my girlfriend at the time, there's a lot of pressure on that side too. We
What?
just moved in together.
Yeah, so you were
Yeah.
not gonna be moving to the UK or to Ireland. Okay. What?
No,
What?
you know, and that's, well, real quick, my girlfriend at the time, it also helped me with training. She was a marathon runner. And so she
Ah.
also helped me get over the top, like with my conditioning, right?
Yeah, can you talk about
So we
that?
trained together. Yeah, Kitty, her name was Krista Stein, Kitty Stein. She'll probably
You know,
watch
because
this.
I
She's a
think people are
marathon
like,
runner.
interested though in like how one even gets to that elite level. I mean, there's probably
Yeah.
insane amount of discipline.
Yeah, well, so the practice schedule is 5 a.m. You go for like a 2-3 mile run. Let's see, in the mornings, at the time we lift weights, and then we do some shadow boxing and other kind of conditioning, and then you go home and work. You know, you finish that, like that's 5. I think it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock. Go home, go to work or whatever you do, and then we come back at 3 o'clock and train again. And then that's that's where you're working on your technique and pad training. So you're doing twice a day. And again, you're running. And then on the weekends, it's the same, like Saturdays, same deal. And I started training with my girlfriend, and she got really good at running marathons. Like, right. The big deal was that she qualified for the Boston Marathon, like within the first couple of years, right? She
Wow.
went from not training at all, like actually, you know, as a young woman, 18 or 19, like she's started to become very heavy set to all of a sudden, like she's training and running. She worked herself, like really good fitness, and also became a bombshell of a woman, you know, at the same time. But beautiful woman already, but like really turned into one. But that was from training. So me and her both are getting up, you know, I mean, in a very supportive way, like two athletes, and you kind of understand. So she helped me take my conditioning to the next level with what's called sprint training, and we go to the track. So this is
Oh.
on Saturday. So on Saturdays, wake up even earlier and basically do 5 to 6 hour workout. And then after that workout, I would go to the track with her. We'd be doing 400s on sprints and like times. So I'd already be tired. She'd be kicking my ass. But the point is that my conditioning level raised, right? Because, you know, and that's what I think helped a lot with definitely me getting the bronze medal in the Princess Cup. Is like, it's harder to get knocked out and even get phased by punches, and you know, like, because you're taking a lot of shots anyway. Even if you win, you take a lot of shots, but it's harder to beat someone if their cardiovascular conditioning is at an elite level. It's got to be anyway, but really the thing that put it over the top was the sprint drills that she taught me, you know, like
Man, that's so
where you're
fascinating.
sprinting and intermittent sprints. And yeah.
So James, like
So I did that.
I come here from a very authentic place. Like I don't know much about MMA fighting, and I know a little bit about fitness, but to me, when I hear sprint training, I think of it as the equivalent of what people call HIIT now, but in the running context. You run really, really, really hard for like a minute and then you jog. Is that kind of what it is? Where you just
Yeah.
go all
Well,
out
okay.
and then stop and then go all
Yeah.
out and stop?
First of all, Muay Thai training is basically HIIT workout. When you're kicking those pads, and even boxing, when you see people hitting the pads like that, for most people that's really exhausting. Fights are 3-minute rounds, right? That's a long time for most people. Most people can't, like amateur level, like before they even get to where I was, they're maybe fighting 90 seconds, and most people can't make it through without throwing up. So you literally have to run, like you got to be a middle distance runner with those type of times in order to be able to get through one of those fights. So you gotta, you know, like your resting heart rate, they always look at that. And I just remember it was really low. In fact, one time I went to the doctor, and the nurse, who didn't quite know why I was there, was like, "Is this machine broken?" And she's hitting the machine. And then, you know, she's like, your blood pressure reading and your pulse says you're dead. And then the doctor came in and said, "Hey, like this guy's like an elite athlete." You know what I mean? And that happens a lot, but that's where you got to be. When you talk about the running, it's 400 sprints all out on a minute time. So if you do it in a minute, cool, you get that rest. But if you don't, you got to keep going. So you do that a few times, and then you move to 100-yard sprints on a certain time period. Then you move to 50s, and then you move to 30s, and then you end with another couple 400s. That's just the track. That's in addition to the 5 or 6 miles that we already ran that morning. because of her, helped me get to the next level, and probably why I was able to fight as an older, why I was able to last. You know, like I think Tom Brady's probably doing something similar to that.
I got a question about this though. So, and this is sort of ties into one of my key philosophies, which is if you bring diversity and experiences, you can really, really build something incredible. So what I'm wondering about is like, did you know in the back of your head, like, oh, this is what's going to up my game, or was it something that you came upon and kind of discovered and appreciated like after the fact?
You know, it took a long time for Kitty to get me out on the track. And when we finally got out on the track, and then, you know, I'd done this running training with her the way we do it, you know, yeah, I'd be tired all the time. But then I fought pretty soon after that. And like, yeah, after the first or second round, you're pretty exhausted, you know, if you watch those fights, no matter how good a shape you're in. But I remember thinking like, dude, I could fight another, you know, after the fight even, I was like, I could fight another, you know, I could fight another fight. And it became critical for tournaments, because in tournaments you might fight like 4 or 5 times in a day, and we're not like boxing tournaments for me were easy because, you know, you're only hitting to the head and the body, but Muay Thai you're kicking in the leg, you can get kneed in the ribs, you know, you know, I've fought with broken ribs, broken hand, broken everything, right? Shoulders. I was able to fight for a long time. Like, to be on that level, you really can't do much else, you know, other than that. It's all I did for, I say, about 20 years, 21 years. So I turned pro. I was like 19, and I had my last fight when I was 41. I fought a guy who had fought already twice. You know, we'd had a draw, I think, at one point, but the last time he beat the shit out of me, I was slow. You know, I was just old. You know, I probably stayed too long at the party. You know, it was Vegas as well, so, you know, they're betting on you, and I wasn't quite as much of an underdog, but I was a bit of an underdog. But the Vegas Athletic Commission suspended me for 180 days, and that's basically like, maybe it was a little longer actually, but that's basically stopping you from fighting. Is what it comes down to once you get suspended in Vegas. So the career was great. I fought all over the world, and I supported myself by doing writing and tech. In fact, I went to graduate school at University of Colorado Boulder as a scholarship that I had, like master's degree for literature. But really, the reason why they had me come is because at the time, number one, there weren't that many brothers like doing HTML or writing the type of stuff that I was doing. So they really, you know, I was a token black guy in the program, which I didn't mind. And Boulder was kind of ahead of the game at the time. They were doing a lot with the internet, and I think they created one of the first browsers there. I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about tech because most of my roommates in the graduate dorm, they were all in some variation of programming, switches, you know, satellite technology, new stuff at the time, right? And they're kind of the pioneers. Like, and one guy in particular, Shin Yamasaki from Japan, taught me a lot, like about just straight programming, the like enhanced, and really it was about porn. So I'll be honest, like we were programming so we could pull porn, I guess. Yeah,
okay,
like
I got it.
Different places, and also then when we put it
so
down
you
in
can aggregate porn from different
to aggregate, and also
sites.
When we put it in the FTP site, so people started coming to us like, hey, how do we get this? You know, you got to put it in a repository, right? Like what would be a server these days.
But you guys managed it. We
had to manage it, and that's when I started to learn about like Apache servers and just like networking and all of that. So you know, I'm like this writing guy who's learning how to do this for a very specific utility. Anybody who's watching this, you should know, like we're all adults here. Porn is at the top of every industry because every 15-year-old kid spends their time trying to break into porn sites. So they got to have the best security. They got to have the top of the line technology.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So that's, you know, and I had a buddy, and then like the different startups I worked with.
They got to protect their IP, right?
They got to protect, exactly. No, but for real, it's a huge money maker. And then, you know, like between porn and finance, like banking, you know, you gotta in the military, but even the military doesn't have it going on. Like, at least at the time, they didn't. Not like the porn sites had it that soon developed in the financial. I learned a lot about that in graduate school. You know, I'm training, so my day was spent. I'd wake up, you know, I'd train, I'd go to class, train again at 3, doing my work. But that's in that time, between the night after I ate, I learned a lot about Linux and how to, like we were doing weird stuff even back then, like we create servers and then we string them together in a RAID, like Linux servers, so we could load balance, like what was new back then.
Then you guys were doing distributed
processing.
You guys were doing distributed processing.
Yeah, we were doing this. Basically, we were doing like Stone Age Flintstone style distributed processing, where you get an old PC and you're really just using the CPU to balance the load in order to create like one big server with like three CPUs strung together, basically. It was weird stuff. And then, I took those. So here's what happened.
Yeah. Why didn't you flip it into a business where it's like, oh yeah, you want access? That's cool. You got to pay a subscription.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we were doing. I mean, at the time we weren't even thinking about, we were just like guys, like getting guys off our backs. You know what I mean? And then, like, of course it started to become like anybody who knew how to do HTML or any type of programming or anything, you get hired like to do projects. So I was making money on the side in graduate school. And then even after, so my first job.
You were there for literature.
I was there for literature. So I got my master's degree. Is completely worthless. And it solidified the fact that eventually I was going to go back to law school. Yeah, that's what I was there for. But I ended up.
But you really learned how to program. You went there for journalism, but you really learned how to program.
I learned how to program, and it enabled me to continue fighting because I had a way to support myself that wasn't just fighting. Because at the time, you couldn't really make that much money off of fighting. Not like these days, like with the UFC, where you're getting $1 million contracts. But some of my fights, I was getting paid pretty good. Like I started getting on the marquee, and I started fighting in like China and in Japan. They pay a whole hell of a lot more than you get paid in the States. So. But, and at the time it was pretty good money. I suppose I could have lived off of it, but realistically, you had to have another job, and tech was an easy thing because you could do it as projects, and you don't have to work full time, and you make a lot of money. So two things happened, like 1999 or 2000. I had an ESPN fight, and I fought on a card with Alex Gong, who was a famous Muay Thai fighter back in the day. And he was like, hey man, you should just move to San Francisco, and train with us. Cause we have a whole stable, like all the people from Thailand. And I was already working for a tech company in Minneapolis. Right at that same time, right after that, I went home, and this company asked me to interview with them called US Web CKS, which at the time was like one of the biggest web companies. Cause back in the day, tech, the first wave of the, e-commerce, as they called it back in the day, that was all websites and websites. And they were just starting to get into the back end and doing the crazy shit like I was doing in graduate school. So I went and interviewed, and I got a job because I wasn't going to, just move out to Fairtex.
Yeah, you're going
to
uproot yourself.
Dorm with them. Yeah, because that would have just sucked. And I didn't want to live in a dorm. And you live with a bunch of fighters. They train for their fight. And then when they're not training, it's just like drinking and, the whole time. So I didn't want to do that, but I ended up getting a job. So I actually moved to San Jose first, and I was training at AKA with Javier Mendez and a lot of fighters that became really famous.
Did Kitty go out with you?
No, she didn't come out with me. So that kind of broke us up, unfortunately.
Part of the decision.
That was part of the calculus. And at the dating, she was a medical student. She was on the team in Minneapolis, and she actually got her degree. Her name is Happy, Dr. Happy Reynolds. She was actually, ending up at San Francisco General.
So you come out to California, to San Jose, so that you can so you can train with this gym, but then also you actually have this job as a developer with this company.
Yeah, luckily I had a job as a developer, and that, so I was working and training basically. And that's all I did. I wasn't so much of a developer. I was more of a systems administrator. In fact, I think that was my title. So
admin.
I was doing a lot of, at the time it wasn't so much Linux at that time. Like I was doing Solaris, like Sun Microsystems, Unix. Unix guy. So, a lot of you're configuring servers and installing them in co-location facilities and setting up the security protocols, that type of stuff. And just, you're monitoring and that. And that's a lot of what I did is mostly Sun Microsystems. We did some Linux, like Red Hat back in the day. I don't even know what it is these days, but it's back way back. I did some development, but I was a shitty programmer. I mean, I do some now, like in Python.
I interned at Sun Microsystems. So I used to have a Solaris machine back in
Oh, you did?
2000, in 2002 when I was in high school. It was
Me
wild.
too. I did. and then I mean, they're so expensive though.
Oh, I know.
But then like with Red Hat, you had a lot more. I mean, it's open source, and you can customize it a lot more. But yeah, so that's.
I was a big Red Hat fan, man.
You were, yeah. So,
yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. I mean,
I know exactly what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, that was the thing, and it was a great thing to have because it was so flexible and allowed me to fill out my career. And then like as I started getting older and started losing more fights, that's when I started thinking more about law school because it was great working in tech. But you remember there was a big meltdown in
yeah.
I mean, there was one in 2001 with 9/11.
Yep.
And I was lucky to be employed then, and I was still fighting. And then, but then there was another big meltdown in 2008, and that was kind of like when I started, law school and everything else, and kind of got back to it. So
how'd you know when it was time to put up the gloves, to hang up the gloves? Was it that last fight that you had in Vegas where you were like,
basically, it was time to get serious about law school and everything else. So Muay Thai and boxing, you fight a lot. Like when it was all said and done, I had over 100 fights. And yeah, I fought a lot, man. I fought a lot. Because, also tournaments, you fight a lot. And I did pro boxing. Like I fought on pro boxing shows, De La Hoya, and by the way, the girl, became my girlfriend when I moved out here, Dr. Reynolds. We got married later. I had 2 kids. And she was also a Muay Thai fighter. She's also a fight doctor for a lot of the UFC and professional boxing fights because she stopped fighting after she had kids.
So she's also an athlete, elite athlete.
She was also that, yeah. She, and she was also, I think she was on one of the, or at least they were starting to film one of the first women's UFC type show where you live in a house. But she didn't make it because she had our first kid. Yeah, so that didn't work out. So her fighting career abruptly ended, and she had to concentrate on interning. And around the same time, I was still fighting, but I was kind of on the downside of my prime. And so it was time for me to get serious. And that's when I went to law school. And originally I was gonna, I planned to apply to all these firms and do securities, like securities litigation.
Yeah, sure.
And, I just ended up with John Burris, and I haven't really looked back, because what I realized is that I really wanted to be a trial attorney, but I realized you go to a firm and you may not even see the inside of a courtroom for like decades. 10 years. Plus, they weren't really knocking on my door either. So, I had a few things lined up, but I wasn't sure if that was going to work out. And Burris was like in the news, like doing nutty, like, everything was ripped from the headlines, like on Law and Order. And then, literally, like at the time, like when I came to him as an intern, he was doing the Ryder's case, and that was
a big deal.
And then, I was taking the bar when he was doing Oscar Grant, basically,
Dang.
And there's also the whole thing of working for like like I work for a black law firm, so that was kind of a big deal and a unique experience, and the type of law that we were doing, it was like an immediate need. Like as soon as you get your license, and even before your license, you're going to be going to court. You're going to be doing interviewing cops and putting them on the hot seat. So I was like, oh, okay. I like this. So here I am, and that's where I started working.
Were there like some real skills that you? I mean, I'm sure that a ton of skills that you developed though when you were in the ring going into law. I mean, just probably not being fearful, right? Probably, or being able to manage your nerves.
Well, here's the thing: is our workouts. The main thing with Greg, that was our coach that coached all of us, and everybody
who's watching this, if you're, you train with Greg and you train in Minnesota, we had what's called the Friday free rounds. I got knocked out a couple times by Greg. Like it was hardcore. Like we would go full out on the pads and in sparring, and it was just really exhausting. And this is after like the sprint training and everything else. So you go in the second workout and you were dead tired, and he pushed you past your limit every Friday. And this happened to me for years, and nothing has ever been as difficult as that. I don't give a fuck whether it's the bar or anything I've ever done has never been as difficult as those workouts. So just being in that mind space where you think you cannot go forward anymore and being forced to be pushed past your threshold, like I take that lesson. And Dr. Reynolds is the same with her, and everybody who has done that, like they understand. And also, you bring like kind of that work ethic, because when you're training twice a day and you're pushing your body past the threshold for years and years and years, there is that. Like I may not be the most skilled lawyer, but I know that I can wake up at 4 a.m. and outwork your ass. You know what I mean? If need be, you know what I mean? Like
you're ready. Yeah,
you may know more than me. You may, you hear that all the time. I've been practicing for 40 years, and I'm just gonna wipe the floor. I'm like, okay, cool. All right, well,
I'm here to outwork you.
Me. Yeah, but I'll outwork your ass. I know I can outwork your ass. That's one thing that I can do, and I think that's why Burris, I think that's one of the reasons why he might have, stuck with me, because, I'll work. I have no problem working, and then I could bring some other skills that'll help me against the more veteran lawyers, because the veterans, they weren't prepared for COVID. They weren't prepared for technology, and they don't even understand it. Like I'm lucky that Burris, like who's an older guy,
he's open
is like all about adopting new technology.
That's it. That's key.
Like and encouraging us to have our own practices on the side. Technology is the key. Like like we had this conversation the other day, and you're kind of like, if you're of the mindset that you want to go back to the way it was, normal, quote unquote, then you're already defeated, because we're going to run circles around you. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
You and me both, I'm sure we're thinking about, okay, what tech can we harness to increase productivity in our practices? Like I was already ahead of the game. I know, like with Google Docs and all that stuff, but we can tweak it more. Like for me, my infrastructure that I'm setting up personally, what I'm moving to, and I know this is a question you're going to ask me, so let's segue into it. Infrastructure.
Yeah,
and how I'm going to harness tech.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you. Like how?
Yeah.
So
there's a few things.
How are you going to innovate? How are you trying to innovate this year and next year? And what's on your mind on that?
Yeah. So the first thing is just pure infrastructure for the firm, especially like, and for my own, and also what I'll talk to Burris about. But one of the things I'm going to do is we used a lot of Google Docs in the Google Drive suite.
Okay.
For collaboration, like that type of thing. But
yeah, we do that heavy. We're heavy in on that.
Yeah. But the storage capacity and how much they start to charge you,
it's expensive, man.
Yeah, it starts to get expensive. So what I'm thinking is I'm probably going to make a decision this week as to which NAS device I'm going to buy. A NAS network for lawyers who are watching this, it's called network attached storage. And basically it's basically a computer that acts as, you can set it up to be exactly like your Google Docs or like a cloud storage. It's, for the technical people, it's a media server, it's a server, but it's like a little mini computer that you configure through a browser. And I'm either going to get a free NAS or I'm going to get Synology, like one of the Synology devices. And I'm going to set that up, and we're going to use that and sort of, transition from Google Docs onto, the Synology device. And for the really technical people like Amir, what I'm probably going to buy the 6-bay and 6-bay RAID and set it up as a RAID storage.
Nice.
So I'll so I can set it up as like probably, 2-3 storage spaces. I think that'll give me a total of, I think they're 12 terabyte disks.
Jeez, you got tons of
Yeah,
space.
so yeah, 60 terabytes. So I won't have to fuck around. And then the staff won't understand it, but basically our Google Drive will become that NAS storage. I can also use it as a media server. So that's internally. And then also we're working on some things. We're automating pleadings, like writing the pleadings.
Yeah,
Like, so
yeah,
all you
yeah.
gotta do is fill out the Google form, and then it spits it into a database, and then you have your template. A lot of the things that like My Case and Clio do, but here's the deal. Again, My
But
Case,
it's more
Clio,
personalized, more customized.
yeah, we can personalize it, and I can personalize it exactly as I need it for pleadings and other discovery documents and that type of thing. So we're working on a project with that should be done towards the end of the year. I probably want to sell it to all the other lawyers, but yeah, that's one of those things. So I need big storage for that. But then the big thing is solos. Like, you got to step up your game on social media, and I invite everyone, if you're watching this, look at Amir's YouTube page, and that is how you have to do it. That is, and you got to be like that, and you have to have a presence on the internet that simultaneously teaches customers, new customers, prospective customers, and also, for publicity, and it's got to do those two things simultaneously. It's got to be informative, like Amir says. Set it up so people can save, whatever it is, $1,500 doing it, and eventually, like, that'll bring in the customers. So like video production, and we plan to do a lot more videos, and that's why I need 60 terabytes of storage. So
I was gonna say that's why you need the storage space, man.
Yeah, I need that storage.
Add up. Yep.
Yeah, yep. The videos add up, but it's necessary, and it's necessary if you want to be a successful, solo practitioner, and you want to practice in the 21st and 22nd century. There's no way around it, because
that's it.
The files are going to get bigger. Like,
it's non-negotiable, man.
Exactly. And so you and your firm, you need to learn you should learn the technology, learn what we were just talking about, and or contact one of us. But really, that is just the way it's got to be. Like, you can see the writing on the wall. If COVID has not taught you anything, it should have taught you that. Like, get on the internet. A lot of the cases, you've seen nationally, like in terms of the type of law that I do, where we're talking about, like, this case that just settled in my hometown, Minneapolis, George Floyd. We feel as though that should have been our case, but Crump has a larger social media following, and he's also, and because of that, he's tied in with the people that you need to be tied in our casework, such as Al Sharpton and sort of the black leaders. But your social media presence helps. So you got to have some of that. But also, there's enough to go around. But I'm just saying, when these things happen, people want to know about you. There is a media aspect of it, and that is why you need social media. And that just because we're talking about high profile police cases, if you're doing probate, my girl Lauren Peebles, she's got a huge social media presence. That's great that you get cases, and I do criminal as well. I'm headed to LA to go get a guy out of jail in the next couple of days. But if you do criminal and you want to grow it, like I look at Joanna Nieves, there's a couple people, but they got a huge Javel Lomano too, so they understand harnessing social media. If you think that you don't have a practice that lends itself to that,
you're wrong.
You think again. and then you, like, who would think, like, okay, IP on social media, like, but there it is. It is so necessary. So yeah, that's what I think.
Thanks, James.
That's where. So those are two things that we're doing as far as is that, and then also, some of the other tech that we want to do is I want to make sure that everybody has, top of the line workstation. So we need to upgrade and get everybody with, because, like, I'm sitting in front of 3 screens right now. Right, I got 3 screens, more real estate, more things that you can do, and I think the rest of the team, and also, customized workstations with a lot more CPU power, because we are doing video editing, and we should all have gaming PCs on my team, right? Even though you may not be a gamer, but you still gotta use that gaming technology,
because you need that video, you need the GPUs. Yeah, exactly.
You need the video. So gaming, a lot of lawyers, you're watching this, you turn your nose up at gaming and porn, probably, but they have the top of the line technology. And okay, so if I say finance, then then you're more with it. You know, we got to be cutting edge, just like
my
those
keyboard,
people,
man.
you know.
I can.
And
Oh
it's
man, I
important.
can't lift it up, but I got a Razer keyboard right here.
There you go,
can't really
brother.
see it.
Yeah,
But
right
yeah,
on.
I'm in your
Yeah.
I'm in your camp, man. I always look for gamer equipment.
And I'll turn and I'll show you guys my workstation, my setup. But I think that is a big deal. You got to have the righteous setup, and you can see. I mean, my cord management, it's got to be better. So I'm not going to enter one of those contests. Hello?
I mean, it looks pretty good to me, man.
Yeah.
Is that a high definition? Is that a 4K video cam right there?
Yes.
There you go, man.
So it helps with Zoom, and then you know, I'm probably going to adopt. You know, I've been talking to Amir, and for more collaboration, probably get more on Discord. Like one of the clerks was like, "Oh, you know, we gotta use what? Oh, now I'm blanking on the technology, but we were using Asana and some of the other ones for a while, and that didn't quite. You know, I just didn't like them, and they're kind of expensive. But I think you've kind of shown me the way with Discord.
Discord's free, man.
Yeah. So I'll use something like that, and that, you know, we'll use that type of stuff to go forward. And I think, you know, it's one of those things. If you're an attorney, you're complacent, that's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
you're just losing out in the long run. That's all.
Yeah. You don't need the overhead. Like the money that you would pay in rent each month, get your team, you know, the right kind of setup. You know, the productivity will not only continue, but it'll increase. I believe if you're using all the right tools. So
that's 100% what we've been doing, man. It's been working out.
Yeah, those are my things. But the NAS device is going to be will be the key. I was thinking, I was looking at like possibly getting back into my systems administration, like setting up a server for all them. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to administrate it, and I don't want to have to do network security and all that kind of crap. So why don't I just get a NAS device?
There you go.
You know, it'll provide the encryption that I need for my client files, and also for all of our communications is all there.
60 terabytes will go a long way too, man.
I think so. Like I remember when I was setting up NAS devices, you know, and we were like, wow, man, 10 gigs. Oh my God. We'll never use 10 gigs of space ever. But you know, I'm about to run out of a terabyte.
What's your final takeaway for everybody?
Like you know this. I think there's a lot of like growing pains, like a lot of new things that have happened because of COVID. And you know, you got the lawyers who are like, no, I needed to go back to normal. And then you got people like us who are like, no, I was already working from home and you know, remote. COVID, it sucks. People died, and yeah, you want to be around people, but you know, this is probably my best year financially, and also like from a productivity standpoint, it validated everything that I was already doing.
You learned the lessons.
You know, I hope that people would talk to lawyers like me and Amir and understand, like, you know, we can help you out. You gotta get with the program on the tech. You just have to.
I love it. Get with the program. Get with the program.
In the future, and say, you know, you're one of those old school lawyers who can't even email. We're gonna run circles around you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna be meeting conferring on email, and I'm just gonna use that thread to go to the judge to compel whatever I need. And I've done it before. But the technology is there. Learn how to use it. But the other thing that's going on is, you know, like in our associations that we're a part of, Amir, and I'm not going to name any names, but basically they're having a hard time defining who they are in terms of post-COVID. Like,
that's going to be a challenge.
You said in the previous conversation, you know, I think who you are is, you got to do it virtually, because we're still going to be in it for another year. But I'm hopefully, you know, federal court, which is what I mostly do. I mean, they're not, at least not opening up for another year, but I think you got to have a place for virtual going forward.
Yeah.
Like this isn't the last pandemic. This isn't the last time that we're, work remotely. And if you're one of those organizations, I mean, it'll cut down on your overhead. That's number one. Two, you can bring in more people and therefore make more money with more people. But you got to wrap your head around it though. And you got to understand it, and you got to use it for productivity. So, you know, like if you feel like, well, you know, the staff is burnt out, you know, or whatever it is, learn the technology, and it will cut down on the time that you spend on a particular project. And that's for the lawyers too. But that's I don't know. That's kind of my takeaway.
No, man, I love it. It's get with the program because the future's here.
And so one of the things I want to do with you, Amir, is we talked about this, but we may as well just say it right now. I think that what we need to do is we know that one of the associations that we work with is having a hard time publishing the videos. And so you and me and another group of attorneys that I know that want to put out MCLEs faster, I think we need to get together and create
content.
Repository of MCLEs.
That's it. Create content.
Put them together and, you know, and offer them back to ACBA, offer them back to the different bar associations, and also, you know, some of the other organizations.
It's about creating content as frictionlessly as possible and putting it out there, just distributing it on all the channels you possibly can.
Exactly.
But James, like that's coming from a good place. I mean, your intent's right. You're just trying to make it less frictionless, and you're trying to put the education out there for people that want to absorb it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
And then the other thing is we're you know, the creative organization that we're a part of, like hopefully we did a movie. Like I believe that Amir and I, we you know, he was the chair of our group that sort of innovated like the idea of using commercials. Now,
but that was pre-COVID, right? Yeah.
That was pre-COVID. And you know, it's hard for people to wrap their minds around it. And like anything that's like different from what everybody else does is, you know, in that organization in the end is, you know, it gets people all up in arms. But you got to think of it like this. There's been a development. One of my groups, we did the Hambleton presentation, and all of a sudden everybody started doing musicals. And it just developed organically. People are actually using the commercial aspect. And now with COVID, it's forced you to learn more about the technology, somehow presented over Zoom. Yeah, the last one that I did, the movie, may not have been, you know, the best presentation, but the point is please one up us. You know, the next one's going to be better.
100%.
The next one is going to be better. And I think that these presentations that we do will get better and more informative and more entertaining, because let's face it, a lot of those presentations are fucking boring, man. You know, like you got to go to sleep sometimes, right? And I think, you know, with the tech, you can add the entertainment value to it that is needed and still inform people about the law. So
it's true. Hey, James, thanks so much. Thanks for being on. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for all the love too. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh man, everybody, please check out. I mean, this guy. This is again. I'm upgrading. You know, to be like Amir, and you know, he'll push me, because I feel like once I see Amir's YouTube page, I was the one that was being complacent. Now I got to up my game, man, for real.
James,
you know,
for real.
Amir, Judy Sang, both of you guys, great job.
Thanks, man. Hey, James, I'm super excited to collaborate with you. Okay, like for real. So let's keep doing it.
Well, we're gonna make it happen.
All right, James. Thanks so much, man. Thanks so much for watching.